A decade of sacrifices. And with a cold, indifferent smirk, my boss shattered it all. "We're replacing you with someone cheaper," Bradley Carter, CEO of GovaTech, announced, his voice smooth, almost rehearsed. "Nothing personal, Ava. Just business." The words hit like a slap, sharp, stinging, final. I sat there, motionless, staring at the man across the sleek conference table. 10 years of my life had been poured into this company. 10 years of fixing their messes, working through sleepless nights, making them millions. And this was my reward? Bradley leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, radiating the kind of smugness only a man who believed he held all the power could possess. "We'll need you to assist in the transition for the next 2 weeks," he continued. "Your replacement will shadow you, get up to speed. After that, we'll finalize your severance package." They wanted me to train the person who was taking my job. The bitter irony twisted inside me, but I kept my face unreadable. They expected me to grovel, to plead, to ask why. I did none of that. Instead, I simply nodded and stood. "Thanks for the notice." I turned, heels clicking against the marble floor, my exit as controlled as the storm brewing inside me. As I reached the door, Bradley's voice followed me, casual, dismissive. "We appreciate everything you've done, Ava. Really. But change is inevitable." I didn't look back. The elevator doors slid shut, enclosing me in a suffocating silence. My pulse pounded in my ears. Anger. Resentment. Betrayal. I had given them everything, built their software from the ground up, designed the architecture that made GovaTech a powerhouse. And now, they were replacing me with someone cheaper. But what they didn't know. I held the patent on everything they depended on. The system that processed millions in transactions, managed their entire operation, it wasn't theirs. It was mine. And they had just severed their only connection to it. Stepping onto the bustling city sidewalk, I inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of realization settle in my bones. They thought they had one. By tomorrow morning, they'd know just how wrong they were. I would revoke their rights to my software the moment my 2 weeks were up. Not out of vengeance, just business. GovaTech's entire infrastructure would begin to unravel, not because of sabotage, but because the law was on my side. They would try to replace me. They would fail. The software wasn't some off-the-shelf product you could hand off to a cheaper employee. It was intricate, layered, a living, breathing system designed with an architecture only I fully understood. Without me, it would be like handing a spaceship's controls to a toddler. I reached my apartment, unlocking the door with steady hands. The space was quiet, dimly illuminated by the city's glow outside. I shrugged off my coat, tossing it over a chair, and exhaled slowly. The anger still burned, but it wasn't controlling me anymore. It was fuel. I sat at my desk and flipped open my laptop. Time to make my move. They thought they could replace me. They were wrong. The screen's glow cast sharp shadows against the walls as my fingers danced over the keyboard, pulling up legal documents, patent agreements, and contract details. A slow, satisfied smile played at my lips. I wasn't going to destroy them. I was just going to let them fall apart on their own. Let them see what happens when you discard the very architect of your success like an old spreadsheet. Tomorrow morning, Bradley Carter would sit in his corner office, sipping his overpriced coffee, basking in the illusion of victory. By the following morning, GovaTech would be on its knees. And I wouldn't even have to lift a finger. I pulled up my patent documentation, the one I had secured years ago, just in case. I never thought I'd need it. Not like this. But something in me had always known, when you work with men like Bradley Carter, you don't just build software, you build an escape plan. My eyes scanned the document, the words practically etched into my memory. Ownership of software rights, including all derivative works, remains exclusively with the original creator unless a transfer agreement has been legally executed. I exhaled, slow and deliberate. There was no transfer agreement. They had built their empire on my creation, and they had been too arrogant, too careless to take ownership of it. Stupidity. Negligence. It didn't matter which. All that mattered was that it gave me the power now. I hovered over the revocation request. One click. One submission. And everything they relied on would cease to belong to them. Not yet. Tonight, I would let them sleep easy. Let them go home, sip their expensive wine, and feel victorious. Tomorrow morning, the real game would begin. I shut my laptop and leaned back, running a hand through my hair. My mind was still buzzing, but my body was drained. 10 years of loyalty, and I was nothing to them. The thought should have stung, but instead, I felt only clarity. They saw me as disposable. They had no idea they were the ones skating on thin ice. Without me, they were nothing. I stood, stretching, then wandered into the kitchen. The city's hum filled the silence. The faint aroma of the coffee I never drank still lingered in the air. I wrapped my fingers around the cool ceramic mug, staring out at the skyline beyond my window. Tomorrow, they would learn the cost of underestimating me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. The next morning, I woke early, moving through my apartment with quiet purpose. Today was just another day, a normal morning. If anyone looked at me, they wouldn't see the woman whose career had been discarded just 24 hours earlier. They wouldn't see the gears turning behind my calm expression. By the time I arrived at GuvaTech, the office was already buzzing with activity. I stepped out of the elevator, moving through the familiar rows of workstations, past the glass offices where executives barked orders into Bluetooth headsets. Stiff nods, awkward half-smiles, they all knew. News spread fast in places like this. No one wanted to be the next name on Bradley Carter's list. I reached my office. No, not mine anymore, I corrected myself. She was already there. My replacement. Sitting at my desk, clicking through files on my computer. Her blonde hair was tied back in a sleek ponytail, and she wore the same kind of tailored blazer I once wore when I still believed in this company. I should have felt something, resentment, anger, jealousy, but all I felt was certainty. She wouldn't last here. She wouldn't survive what was coming. Bradley called me into his office before noon. He leaned back in his chair, watching me with that same smug expression from yesterday. I assume you'll be professional about this, he said, gesturing toward my replacement. I met his gaze, unflinching. Of course. He chuckled. Good. I knew you'd see reason. He didn't know anything. I spent the afternoon walking my replacement through the system. I answered every question, pointed out important files, all while knowing that in less than 24 hours, none of it would matter. I wasn't cruel. I didn't want her to fail. But this wasn't about her. This was about them. The day dragged on. At 5:30 sharp, I packed up the last of my things, a few old notebooks, a framed photo I had forgotten was even there. As I walked past Bradley's office, I saw him on the phone, laughing. Probably celebrating how easily he had cut costs. He had no idea. No idea that the foundation of his company was already cracking beneath him. I stepped into the elevator, letting the doors close. One more night. That's all they had left. At 6 a.m., I logged into my private terminal. The legal request had already been approved. GuvaTech's license to my software was officially revoked. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. Calm. Collected. Certain. At precisely 8:32 a.m., my phone buzzed. Emergency alert, internal system failure detected. I smirked. Right on time. By 9:15 a.m., GuvaTech was in chaos. Bradley's assistant was the first to call. Ava, hi, listen, we need you to come in. There's a situation. Her voice was rushed, laced with panic. I glanced at the time, smiled. Oh. What kind of situation? Everything's down. The client portals, the internal databases, it says it's a licensing issue, but she trailed off, breath heavy. They said the software isn't ours anymore. That's because it's not. I kept my voice even. I'm sorry. That's really not my problem anymore. In the background, I heard voices, someone, probably Bradley, yelling. The assistant sucked in a shaky breath. Look, can you just come in? Maybe we can. I ended the call. I wasn't going back. I had already given them everything. I watched the news unfold from the comfort of my apartment. By noon, GovTech was making headlines. By 2 p.m., investors were pulling out. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, Bradley Carter was scrambling to salvage his empire. Me? I was already building something new. They never saw me coming. I didn't ruin them. They did that all on their own. I didn't sabotage, hack, or break anything. I simply let them fall under the weight of their own arrogance. Tomorrow morning, Bradley Carter would wake up to the remains of the company he thought he could run without me. Me? I would wake up free, with nothing to lose and everything to gain. I leaned back in my chair, coffee in hand, my laptop open in front of me. The chaos was already unfolding, and I didn't even have to lift a finger. The news was everywhere. Tech giant Genova faces major system outage, clients left in the dark. A slow smile curled at the corner of my lips as I scrolled through the articles. It had only been a few hours, but the panic was spreading fast. Clients were furious, investors were jumping ship, and I knew exactly what was happening in that glass tower I used to call my office. Bradley Carter was losing control. He thought he could replace me. He thought I was disposable. He was learning the hard way. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, Bradley Carter. I let it ring. And ring. And ring. Then, silence. I could imagine him, frustration mounting, pacing his office, trying to salvage the mess he created. The IT team would be scrambling, refreshing their screens over and over, trying to fix something that wasn't broken. It was simply no longer theirs. I took a sip of coffee, the rich, bitter taste grounding me. They had no plan. No backup. No contingency. Nothing. Because I was the plan. And I was gone. Inside that conference room, I knew exactly how it was playing out. I had been in those meetings before, just never on the side of the disaster. Bradley would be sitting at the head of the table, his hands clenched into fists, his temper barely contained. I need answers, his voice would be sharp, urgent. Why is everything failing? The IT director, probably sweating through his dress shirt, would shift in his seat. Sir, it's not a crash. It's a licensing issue. Bradley would pause, confused. What do you mean? A heavy breath. A reluctant answer. Ava Sinclair revoked our access. Silence. I could almost hear the sharp inhale, see the color draining from Bradley's face as those words sank in. His voice would waver before he forced control back into it. That's impossible. We own the software. A longer silence. Then the quiet, fatal words. No, sir. She does. I tapped my fingers against my coffee mug, waiting for the next call. It wouldn't take long. Bradley would be spiraling, his mind scrambling for a way out. He prided himself on control, on being 5 steps ahead. But this time, he never even saw it coming. My software wasn't just a tool. It was the backbone of GovTech. Every client dashboard, every internal process, every security measure, all of it was built on my architecture. Now, they had nothing. I refreshed my inbox. More notifications. More alerts. GuvaTech was bleeding out, and I had only just begun watching. My phone vibrated again, but it wasn't Bradley this time. It was an unknown number. I smirked. The board. They had realized what was happening. Bradley's charm wouldn't save him now, not when their stock was plunging, their clients were demanding refunds, and every major news outlet was reporting the disaster. I let the call go to voicemail. I already knew what they wanted. They wanted a fix. They wanted me. But I wasn't their employee anymore. I wasn't their safety net. They had made that choice. By mid-afternoon, the full extent of the damage was sinking in. The board was furious. Investors were pulling out. Competitors were poaching clients like vultures circling a dying animal. Another call. Another voicemail. This time, I didn't even bother to check. Listened, Ava, this is Richard Lyman from the board. We need to discuss a solution. We're hoping to negotiate a way. 2. I deleted the message before he finished. They weren't hoping to negotiate, they were desperate. I knew it was coming. Bradley's name flashed on my phone again. I let it ring, then on the 4th try I picked up. Hello, Bradley. There was silence on the other end, a hesitation, then his voice tight with frustration. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers drumming against my knee. Do we? A sharp exhale. Ava? Come on, I know you're upset. I laughed softly, not the kind of laugh that meant I was amused, the kind that said I wasn't buying his nonsense. Upset, I repeated, savoring the word. Bradley, I'm not upset, I'm just watching the inevitable unfold. His breathing was tense on the other end. You made your point all right, but we can fix this. You can come back. I cut him off. Come back. I let the silence hang between us before I spoke again. You really don't get it, do you? Bradley said nothing, so I continued. You thought I was just another name on a payroll, I said, my voice measured. You thought you could replace me with someone cheaper, but here we are and tell me, Bradley, how's that working out for you? Nothing, just the sound of his defeat settling in. Ava, he tried again, but his voice was different now, quieter, weaker. I'll double your salary, triple it, just I sighed. Bradley, he stopped. I don't want your money, I said, my tone final. I just want you to understand something. Another pause, then you needed me. I never needed you, and with that I hung up. I stared at my phone for a moment, then set it down. Beside me I felt nothing, no guilt, no remorse, just the quiet satisfaction of justice. GuvaTech was failing, and there was nothing they could do about it. Tomorrow morning Bradley would wake up to the remains of the company he thought he built me. I would wake up free with nothing to lose and everything to gain. I set my phone down, exhaling slowly. The weight of finality settled over me, not as an anchor but as a quiet triumph. GuvaTech was unraveling thread by thread, and I didn't need to lift a finger. I had done my part, the rest gravity would take care of. The city outside my apartment stretched wide and endless, bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon. I stared at it for a moment, then leaned back in my chair, stretching my arms above my head. It was almost poetic, really. They had thrown me away, now they were drowning without me. The frantic attempts to fix the unfixable. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, my inbox had flooded with desperate emails. Subject: urgent. Please respond. Subject: let's talk. Subject: immediate assistance needed. The messages were all the same: empty pleasantries, forced apologies, hollow requests for a conversation. I didn't reply, said I refreshed. The news stock drops 37% in a single day as GuvaTech faces catastrophic system failure. A soft hum of satisfaction stirred in my chest. Investors weren't just pulling back, they We're running. I scrolled further. Bradley Carter issues statement. We are working to resolve the situation. I clicked on the link, watching the embedded video load. There he was. Bradley sat stiffly at the press conference table, his shirt slightly wrinkled, something I had never seen before. His jaw was tight, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He looked defeated. I turned up the volume. We understand the concerns our clients and investors have, he said, his voice carefully controlled, but I could hear the edge beneath it. We are working closely with our team to address the technical issues and will provide updates as soon as possible. A reporter's voice cut in sharp and demanding. Mr. Carter, is it true that Ava Sinclair, your former head architect, revoked the company's access to the software? Bradley's jaw twitched for a moment. He didn't speak, then his fingers tightened around the microphone. No comment. I smirked. The comment sections were ruthless. How do you fire the one person who built your company? Looks like someone made a huge mistake. This is why you don't undervalue your employees. Karma at its finest. The backlash wasn't just contained to the media, it was spilling into the real world. Clients were dropping contracts, citing breaches of service agreements. Vendors were pulling partnerships, unwilling to associate with an unstable company. And the employees? They were turning on him. Desperate calls. Empty apologies. At exactly 7:45 p.m., my phone rang again. Bradley Carter. I stared at the screen, watching his name flash across it. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then, just as expected, it rang again. This time, I answered. Ava. His voice was taut with frustration, but there was something else woven into it, something I had never heard before. Panic. I took my time responding. Bradley. He exhaled, the sound sharp and forced. I need to see you. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, that's interesting. You didn't seem to need me a few days ago. I was wrong. The words were clipped, forced through gritted teeth. Look, Ava, I know you're upset. I laughed, cutting him off. I'm not upset, Bradley. I'm watching you choke on your own arrogance. Silence. He cleared his throat. I'll offer you triple your salary. I'll rewrite your contract. Hell, I'll give you part ownership. Just come back and fix this. I smiled. Bradley, I said slowly, savoring his desperation. You still don't get it, do you? Another silence. You didn't just fire me, I continued. You treated me like I was nothing. Like I was disposable. Like I wasn't the reason your company thrived. And now, you want me back? I let the question linger, then finished smoothly, no, Bradley. You don't get to undo what you did. You don't get to fix this with money or apologies. This isn't about revenge. I let the words hang, then added, voice calm and even, this is about consequences. I hung up. Legal consequences hit hard. The next morning, I woke up to another wave of headlines. Govatech faces multi-million-dollar lawsuits as clients demand compensation. Shareholders call for CEO Bradley Carter's resignation amid crisis. I clicked through the articles. The lawsuits were pouring in, corporate partners claiming contract violations, small businesses citing lost revenue, even individual consumers joining class action suits. The board was in chaos. Investors had completely lost confidence. And now, Bradley's own executives were turning on him. I let out a quiet breath, taking a sip of my coffee. I had never wanted this to turn into a spectacle. But that's the thing about arrogance, it makes people blind to their own destruction. By noon, it was official. The board had forced Bradley Carter out. The same board members who had nodded along as he dismissed me had now dismissed him. It was poetic, really. I sat at my desk, scrolling through my messages, a flood of job offers, partnership inquiries, invitations from competitors who had been waiting for an opportunity like this. I could start over. Build something better. Something mine. A soft exhale left my lips. Bradley had thought he was invincible. He had thought he controlled everything. But power isn't just about money. It's about who holds the foundation. And I had always held it. He just realized it too late. I closed my laptop. No more emails. No more calls. GuvaTech was no longer my concern. They had tried to replace me. They had tried to erase me. Instead, they had destroyed themselves. Me? I wasn't looking back. Because the best revenge is proving you never needed them to begin with. The hum of the city outside filled the quiet space of my apartment. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. No deadlines. No crises. No bosses with false promises. I was free. And yet, as I stared out at the glowing skyline, a different question settled in. What now? The silence was unnerving. No urgent notifications. No meetings to prepare for. No endless cycles of proving my worth. It was just me. For a decade, I had been Ava Sinclair, the architect of GuvaTech's success. The woman who held it all together. But I wasn't just the person who took them down, I had to become something more. I reached for my phone, scrolling through a flood of job offers and partnership requests. Competitors, startups, investment firms, they all wanted me. They had seen what I was capable of. But I wasn't interested in another job, another title, another decade building someone else's empire. I wanted my own. By morning, the business world had already shifted. The same industry insiders who once praised GuvaTech were now dissecting its downfall. One architect. One decision. The collapse of a giant, how Ava Sinclair outmaneuvered the company that betrayed her. I wasn't just a former employee, I had become a symbol, a cautionary tale for companies that undervalued their talent. And that was power. Stepping onto my balcony, the crisp morning air bit against my skin. The city stretched out before me, alive with possibilities. I had the leverage, the reputation, the name. Now I just needed a plan. The idea was simple: build something better. No corporate greed. No bureaucracy. A company that thrived on talent, not exploitation. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. That part was over. No, I wanted to win. The messages from GuvaTech didn't stop. Bradley had gone silent, but others weren't giving up so easily. Ava, we can fix this. Name your price. We made a mistake. Let's rebuild together. Each message was another reminder of how quickly power shifts when you realize who actually holds it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Their company was in ruins, and I wasn't interested in salvaging it. I had bigger plans. A week later, I walked into the offices of a top venture capital firm. A place I once would have been nervous to step into. Back when I was just an employee trying to prove my worth. But today? I wasn't here to ask for a job. I was here to launch something of my own. I sat across from the firm's director, a man who had followed my career for years. He leaned forward, curiosity flickering in his gaze. Ava, what's next for you? I smiled. I'm building something new. His expression shifted, interested, intrigued. Tell me more. And so I did. I told him about my vision. About a company that wouldn't just replicate what GuvaTech had done, but reinvent the entire industry. A workplace where talent was valued, where the next generation of architects wouldn't have to fight to be seen. By the time I finished, there was no hesitation. We'll fund you, he said. Whatever you need. I exhaled slowly, shaking his hand. This wasn't just a deal, it was the beginning of something unstoppable. That evening, I stood in front of my laptop one last time. I clicked on GovaTech's website, watching as their stock hovered at its lowest point in a decade. The forums were filled with speculation. Would they survive? Would they recover? I already knew the answer. It didn't matter. I closed the tab, then, without a second thought, deleted every email, every voicemail, every trace of the company that had once defined me. I wasn't Ava Sinclair, the woman they discarded. I was Ava Sinclair, the woman who had rebuilt herself. And this time, no one would ever take me for granted again.